everyone, and welcome back to the UK Gaming Network podcast. I'm your host, Zoidberg, and this is week 3 of our month of sport. This week we're going to get competitive, which is the reason we play games after all. Beating a computer-controlled opponent is no match for triumphing over your friends, especially when they're in the same room as you, and there can be no better way than in a multi-sport competition. Back in 1984, both Konami's Track and Field in the arcades and Ocean Software's Daley Thompson's Decathlon for the Spectrum were huge games, and between them they kicked off a whole genre of sports games. Alternately hitting 2 buttons to run and then aiming to hit that sweet spot of 45 degrees to jump or throw became the industry standard, and even to this day we see variations on the same old control system game after game. Whether it's waving motion controllers in the air or running your finger left and right on a touchscreen, the gameplay is basically the same as it's always been. This simplicity is why the genre has endured over the years, and why we see games like Mario and Sonic at the Olympics top the charts, selling millions of copies. What makes them preferable to games that concentrate on a single sport is that by featuring a lot of different disciplines, it means that each player will probably have an event that they consider a speciality. Anyone can pick up and play these games and take part in the fun, which is what makes them one of the best social gaming experiences that you can have. With the Tokyo Olympics coming next year, it's the perfect time for developers to bring us some new games to play, and we don't just mean the new Mario and Sonic game coming for the Switch. How about an officially licensed Olympics game for starters? For now though, here's our all-time top 5. Number 5, Summer Olympiad. Let's start with a game that not many people will have heard of. Summer Olympiad by Tynesoft was one of the games that came bundled with my Atari ST, and it quickly became a favourite, despite only 3 of the 5 included events being worth playing. We especially enjoyed the skeet shooting, particularly when controlled with a mouse for precision aiming, as it required fast reflexes and a good memory. The graphics were of a consistently high quality in every event, and giving each one its own musical theme as it loads was a stroke of genius. If the fencing and 400 metre hurdles had been much cop, you'd have seen this game much higher up the list. Number 4, Winter Games. Epics were the name for multisport games in the 8-bit era, particularly on the Commodore 64, and Winter Games is the greatest example of their mastery. Ski jump, hot dogs, speed skating, bobsled and even ice dancing were all incredibly playable, and even though the visuals haven't aged well, the gameplay still shines through. The best event, however, was the biathlon, encompassing cross-country skiing with expert marksmanship. Using a quick up and down motion to reload between shots was perfect, and each time you managed to hit 5 shots in a row you wanted to punch the air in celebration.
400-meter race.
Number 3, Athlete Kings. Athlete Kings for the Sega Saturn, named Decathlete in both Japan and the US, brought some much needed character to the genre when it launched in 1996. Instead of a nameless avatar, you could now choose from a field of cartoon athletes to represent yourself in the game. Each character was slightly stronger in either throwing, jumping or speed, with only the US competitor, Rick Blade, being a good all-rounder. It was also nice to see some of the events relying on timing and skill rather than just bashing buttons. All 10 events of the decathlon were included, and if you thought having to keep a steady rhythm for the 400 metres at the end of day 1 was bad, just wait until you get to the 1500. Number 2, Wii Sports. Everyone got Wii Sports with their new console when the Wii launched in December 2006, and it was the perfect way to demonstrate how motion control worked. The reason why it endured, and why the dozens of copycat games didn't, is that there's much more to the gameplay than simply waving your Wii remote madly. The subtle nuances of each sport only revealed themselves through prolonged play, and a brilliant set of mini-games. Wii Sports Resort was just as good, adding some fantastic new events such as archery and frisbee, but the golf and bowling still remain the best. Number 1, International Track and Field. While there can be no denying the iconic status of the original Track and Field in the arcades, it was International Track and Field for the PlayStation that reinvigorated the series in the 90s, and remains one of our most played games of all time. There are 11 events in total to play, and if you connected up a multi-tap, up to 4 people can compete for maximum enjoyment. What makes it brilliant is that no matter how much of an expert you become, you'll always feel like you can do better, and of course there's always the potential that you'll fail miserably in your pursuit of perfection. In the quest for ever faster times, everyone will develop their own technique for bashing the buttons, convincing themselves that their method is the best. Now it's time for this week's gaming news. Retrogaming is definitely big business these days, so it's no surprise that our micro-console collection is set to get even bigger. With Capcom's Home Arcade and Sega's Mega Drive Mini already looming on the horizon, the latest announcement is one of the best yet. No self-respecting retro game collection is complete without a PC engine, and you'll soon be able to see why when Konami bring the PC Engine Core Graphics Mini, to give it its full name, to stores in March for around £80. It will come with 50 games in total, and there are some genuine classics in the lineup. Expect to play well-known games like Bonk's Adventure, Bomberman, and the best version of R-Type to exist outside of an arcade, as well as a number of more obscure but still brilliant Japanese titles like Super Darius. Pre-orders are live now, so we'd recommend you don't hang about if you want one. Sega announced this week that the fantastic Super Monkey Ball series is finally coming back to consoles this October. As massive fans of the series, this news is incredibly welcome. Banana Blitz HD, for those who don't know, will be a remaster of the game that first appeared on the Wii, where it was part of the launch lineup for the Nintendo console. It introduced motion controls, which meant that it never felt quite as good as the GameCube games that had come before it, but it still had the immense charm that the series is known for. I would expect the Switch and PS4 versions to have tilt controls as an option also. Hopefully this remaster is being used by Sega to test people's interest in the franchise, so that it will lead to a full sequel later down the line. Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD will be released on October 29th. The latest entry in Konami's annual football series is due in September, and this week it even managed to make the headlines on the BBC Sport website. eFootball PES 2020 was announced this week to have signed an exclusivity deal with Italian champions Juventus. What made this newsworthy is that they won't feature in FIFA 20 as a result. This news comes only a week after it was revealed that their deal with Liverpool had expired and they had signed up Manchester United instead. Of course, any PES fan will tell you editing the team names as soon as you load it up is all part of the experience, but at least there are two that you won't have to touch this year. eFootball PES 2020, which is an incredibly silly title even for a series that was once called International Superstar Soccer Pro Evolution, will be out on September the 10th for Xbox One, PS4 and PC. Now we come to our reviews of this week's new releases. Sorrento is a VR game that puts you in the shoes of a ninja warrior, and it comes to PlayStation VR on the back of some strong word of mouth. All I can say is everyone must have played a different game to me. You play with the Move controllers, armed with either swords or guns, teleporting around the play area as you hack, slash and shoot your way through wave after wave of progressively more challenging enemies. In theory it's a great idea, but in practice the controls leave a lot to be desired. While it never once made me feel motion sickness, it instead made me feel annoyed that I couldn't manoeuvre myself around or climb in the way I wanted to. There were fleeting moments when the action felt like it was what the developers intended, but it never once made me feel like I was enjoying myself. Whether the problems I had are exclusive to the PlayStation 4 version, I don't know, but it's definitely a huge disappointment. One of the best April Fool's jokes played on Gamers was the review of a game called Advanced Lawnmower Simulator, published in Your Sinclair magazine. If the game had actually existed, it might have resembled Grasscutter mutated lawns. As the title suggests, this is a game all about guiding your mower over every blade of grass as fast as possible. Obstacles naturally get in the way, including pets, toys and strange green monsters, as the levels get more difficult. It's quite good fun in the early levels, but the fun gives way to frustration as you progress. This is the type of game that should be about learning the quickest route around the level, nailing it and bagging your 3-star reward. Sadly though, there are just too many random elements that crop up, stopping you from being able to do this, and you'll end up wanting to throw your joypad out the window rather than play it. It's a shame, as there was potential here, and the music is excellent. 1980X is a game that aims to get your attention through nostalgia alone, telling the story of a teenager called Kid discovering the joys of arcade games. It does this, on the whole, with nicely animated 16-bit style cutscenes and a voiceover. The visuals reminded me a little of the work of Delphine on the Amiga, and the soundtrack is also perfect for the aesthetic that the designers were going for. But the real reason for playing are the arcade games themselves. Throughout the story, you'll play through 5 games based on the most popular styles of arcade machines. You start with a Final Fight style scrolling beat-em-up, an R-Type inspired shooter, an Outrun style racer, a platform hack and slash, and finally a maze game. Each of these is entertaining in their own way, but none of them are especially challenging, and most of them end just as you're getting into them. The whole package will take you about an hour to play through completely, and it ends on a to be continued message, making you think that this is actually just a paid for demo. Maybe waiting to see what the developers do next is the best option, as there are suggestions here that this is the beginning of something special. Before we finish, it's time, as always, for our Retro Game of the Week. As we were researching this week's top 5, we came across Izzy's Quest for the Olympic Rings on the SNES. This was a platform game by US Gold released to coincide with the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. This was a time when character platform games were at their peak, so in order to stand out you had to do something unique or special, and this game didn't do either. It also didn't help that Izzy was an almost universally hated character, who even had a TV show that only aired one episode. Visually it's similar to Cool Spot, but without that game's playability, and although Izzy's way of changing form at various times was a nice touch, it really deserved a better game than this one. That brings this show to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. Did you agree with our top 5? We'd love to hear about your memories of playing multi-event sports games and which ones you think we'd missed. Tell us about them in the comments, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at UKGN Network. I'll be back next week with the final week of our month of sport, where we take a look at the world of extreme sports. Until then, thanks for listening. See you soon.